Well, hello, hello. Thank you all for joining today. Can everyone hear me? If you shaking, I see a couple head nods. Okay, thumbs up.
You're good.
Good deal. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me today. My name is Brittany Neal, and I am a team member from KY-ABRI, Kentucky Academic and Behavioral Response to Intervention, and also a part of a part of our projects. We also work with CYBERS, the Center for Instructional and Behavior Research in Schools. And thank you all for joining today. And I thank KEXAC for this opportunity also to present and share some of my resources and things that I have learned along the way. I see it's exactly 10:45, and I think everybody's here that's going to be here. A little bit about myself. I have a huge background in special education. I started out in a fairly large school district here in Kentucky. And I was with that school district for about 13 years. And then I switched over to KY-ABRI in November. And so I'm on the other side of education. And I started out in that district. I started out as an EBD assistant. And then I went back to school and just kept learning and kept just wanting to know more. And like, I really want to make this my career. Like, I have a passion for students with disabilities. And also just education overall. And so I just didn't want to stay as an assistant. So like I said, I went back to school. I got my bachelor's and my master's, and now here I am. My last role that I ended with the school district, I was an implementation coach. And so I worked closely with special ed teachers and regular ed teachers also. I arced special education meetings. I kind of kept the school in compliance with special ed things, just kind of all things special ed, and the MTSS process also as well. And so that is about me. And just to give a disclaimer, all three of my children are home today. So please, just give me a little bit of grace, but they should be good to go. So of course, my screen is not wanting to proceed here. All right, there we go. So today, some things that we'll be talking about, we will identify and target problem behaviors in the classroom, and also discuss and provide evidence-based behavioral interventions and strategies and tools to implement in your classroom or school. And we're also going to explore some data collection tools and some resources that I have used, and then some new ones also that I have learned along the way as well. So I like dialogue. And so it's okay if I'm going to be the only one talking. I really don't want to talk, although I can talk for hours and hours about all of these things. I would appreciate your participation. Feel free to unmute. This is informal. Feel free to unmute or drop things in the chat. I do know that I have a co-host that kind of helped me to navigate things. So if I miss your comment in the chat or anything, please unmute. It is all good. Interrupt me, no problem. All right, so who's here today? Just kind of, this is my first time presenting with KEXAC, so just kind of to give me a familiar of kind of my audience and who I'm talking to. If anybody feels froggy, anybody want to?
I'm Mike Neal from Frankfort, Kentucky. The alternative school in Frankfort. It's called the Academy.
Okay. Nice to meet you.
I'm Robin Richardson, and I'm a counselor at Hopkins County Day Treatment in Madisonville, Kentucky. And I am going to keep you muted because we're also in summer session, and I am having to keep a couple of students in my office because we don't have an instructor here today.
Understand. I have been in that world before. I totally understand. Thank you guys for sharing out. Anybody else?
My name is Jeff Ott, and I'm from Henry County Schools. I teach in the Center for Educational Options. I'm a special ed teacher, and this is my first full year because I only started in January.
Oh, congratulations. Congratulations. I love working with new teachers, seasoned teachers, in between, instructional assistants.
If you'll print out the PO, and come in here. We can probably do this while she's.
Okay, I'm sorry, they weren't talking to me. All right, well, we'll go ahead. I want to keep the time, and I want to respect your time. Thank you all for being here today. It says a lot with you all coming and wanting to learn also during your break. As we know, school is about to start, but this is still technically kind of your break time. So I appreciate that, and I will respect your time and try to leave, and we'll leave time at the end to ask questions. So what's the problem? What's going on out there in the world from last year, what you're facing on up to even prepping for school? Or if there's not a problem, if you have good things to share out, what are you guys seeing in the school? Because I am no longer in the school. I hear it from administrators, I hear it from teachers, but it's just kind of been in my district that I came from. Any post-pandemic behaviors that are on the rise that you're like, perhaps it's okay. Well, maybe there is no problem, and that is okay.
Oh, Brittany, I think that people will jump in, I think, as we go on, but just kind of some contextual stuff around this. We do have almost everybody here is in school already.
Okay.
So most of these folks have been in school since the beginning of July. They're in, almost all of them are in year-round school. So
Okay.
they are, most are on a break today, but some are doing double duty in a classroom while also doing this. That's why you heard some folks talk about having students in their offices with them now. So we have a lot of learning and teaching that's happening simultaneously today across Kentucky with our students. And so there's a lot going on there. Folks will jump in.
Okay, no, that's fine. I appreciate it, Ronnie. Thank you.
Yeah.
No,
and there's lots of comments in the chat if you see those, with folks telling you where they're from, what they're doing, and kind of what they're into.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you. So I will do my best, guys, to look at the screens and look at the chat. So I appreciate it and work with me. Okay, so letting go of virtual classes and use of Chromebooks. Yes, that is. Let me scroll back up. Ohio schools, apathy, state agency schools. Hi, Ms. Moss. Hi, Heather. Rowan. Okay. New teacher here, transition from bus driver. Need of classroom management plans, teaching expectations. Okay, so we're going to discuss some of those things. Kids are still bouncing off the walls, wanting breaks all the time, outside mask breaks anytime. Yes, I can totally feel that. Going back to mask has been a trying thing. So you may be experiencing, I've seen some disruptions, just overall non-compliance, low motivation, especially after the pandemic. Definitely, I've struggled with motivating myself to even get up and actually put on formal clothes and going back into the office. That definitely has been a transition. Post-pandemic behaviors, a lot of social and emotional needs that are on the rise from that. Some of you all may be facing awareness versus ability. And also I like to look at this as skill versus will. Sometimes you have those students that they're capable of doing it and they have the skill set to do it, but they're just not willing to do it. And that can also fall up under non-compliance as well. Excuse me. And those off-task behaviors in the classroom or virtual as well. All right, so what matters? Instruction matters. All behavior changes is an instructional process. And so meaning we have to teach those behaviors to our students. We can assume that the students come in knowing how to sit in their seat or even knowing how to gain the teacher's attention. We make those assumptions a lot of the times. And I still do that myself sometimes, but just going back to knowing that we have to teach behavior. Behavior also goes hand in hand with academic. That has to be taught and it has to be clear and concise for our students to understand that. Effectiveness matters. What is the simplest way to make a difference in success? Failure ratio of a student. What we do, our instructional strategies, how effective they are, and when we implement those, that makes a difference also in shaping and changing behavior. And lastly, adult behavior matters. Student behavior will not change until adult behavior changes. This one can be a tough one, especially I will give my experience when I was in K-TIP. Many of you may remember K-TIP. But that was way back when, many moons ago, when you first became a teacher in Kentucky, you had to go through the Kentucky teacher intake process. I think that's what it's called. But I really realized that during that time that what I do as the teacher, it matters. If I care, then my students will care. If I believe it, my students will believe it. They may not initially right off the bat, but over time, as your behavior changes as the adult and you're guiding and shaping that behavior, the behavior will change. But what we do and what we say definitely matters. And our mindset also about what we say to our students also matters. All right, we all know everybody loves a good umbrella. And so just to kind of, let me get off my screen. Just to kind of briefly go over this is the multi-tier systems of support. And so tier 1 is universal. That's in the green. This is for all students. So this is what everybody walking through the door is going to get. Every student is expected to follow those routines and procedures. Those are school-wide expectations. And you may have different expectations for different parts, for the cafeteria, for your special classes or your elective classes. They may have their own set, but school-wide, everybody is on the same page and all students, they receive that instruction. So moving up to tier 2, this is our yellow part. So this is, let me go back, my apologies. Can I go back to where I was? Sorry, my computer is lagging, guys. I apologize. And so the yellow part is not all of your students. That's only about 10 to 15%. These are students that still need this green part. They still need the school-wide expectations that every other student gets. They need that, but they need some additional support. And that may be behavioral or mental health targeted interventions. And that may be where also you pull in your mental health therapist, you pull in your behavior coaches as well, which they're on they're also at tier 1 support also, but those might be, it's going to be more intense, and that is not all of your students. That is about 10 to 15%. And then we go up to tier 3, which this is more intensive. This is going to be your daily interventions. More than likely, it's going to be those students who are not responding to your tier 1. You've also added another layer of tier 2 interventions, and they're still not responding. And so they need more intensive. And it could be also that you're looking into special education services as well, potentially. Any questions? I'm trying to keep the chat open. All right. Come on. Here we go. Thank you for bearing with me. So before I really dive into behavior, I want you to look at this video. Please disregard the name the name of the person who created the video, but she has some really good points that we'll talk about right after. And I'm not going to show the entire video also. And I apologize again. I don't know if it's because it's slightly raining here. And maybe the video doesn't want to play, and that is okay. Yep, it is okay. I will improvise. Oh. Come on. Come on, come on. My computer is loading very, very slow. Please, please, please. This is not where I wanted to go. Let's see. Okay, so anywho, my next slide, we were talking about functions of behavior. Come on. Okay, it's coming back. Functions of behavior. And so typically there's 4 functions of behavior. Can anyone name them? I'm doing a lot of talking. Anybody want to drop in the functions of behavior? Anybody familiar? Attention, definitely trying to gain attention, whether it be of the teacher or it could be from students. Escape. Has anyone seen escape or avoidance? A student trying to avoid an assignment or potentially just a teacher directive. Sensory stimulation, yes. Oh, come on. The computer is not my friend today. Come on. Yes, and it could be also trying to gain a tangible item or gain the attention of a student. Oh, come on. Guys, I do apologize. My computer is just doing its own thing. Thank you for your grace. All right. So typically, here we go. I may have to restart my computer. I'll just go from it from here. Let's go. All right, I do apologize. So it's to escape, gain attention of the teacher or to obtain an item, to avoid a task or to avoid an assignment, and also sensory stimulation. They could be trying to get some sensory input. It could be to get what they need. This is not right. And I am frozen. Give me just a second. It is loading up.
Oh, Brittany, I think you're muted there.
Yes, I'm going to reshare my screen, guys. I am so sorry for technology. This is what it is.
As we talked in our opening session, we've been doing this conference virtually for this is our 3rd year. And we know that it is never as good as being in person. We're working on it.
I apologize. You're breaking up. I didn't hear anything. Let me see. Let me close some of my tabs. This is no fun. Okay. So I'm going to close all my other tabs. Let's see. Okay. And so to figure out the function of the behavior, I'm just going to talk, guys, to figure out the function of the behavior. We typically use a functional behavior assessment. And so I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are familiar with a functional behavior assessment. And when dealing with the functional behavior assessment, there are several factors that you bring into and that you have to consider when wanting to complete a functional behavior assessment, figuring out the why of the behavior. Students, I know sometimes, and when I was in the classroom, I'm like, they just want to do what they want to do. But no, really, that it's the reason why students are doing what they do. They don't just do it just for the heck of it or because they don't like us. I know it's easy sometimes to think that, but that is not the case when it comes to our students. They are trying to gain something from us, and it is up to us as the instructional person, as the adult in the room, to shape and make that happen. Yay, my slides are back up. Come on. Okay, here we go. All right. So can you all see my screen? I'm just going to share it.
We do not see your screen yet. I don't.
Okay. I do apologize.
I will say the connection has gotten a lot better without the shared screen.
Okay, so maybe I guess I apologize. I will do it without the shared screen and I will just talk. So if you don't mind to kind of help me, if there are some comments in the chat, guys, I do apologize. Let me, yes. So why students demonstrate challenging behaviors? Let me back it up. So to escape, it's escape or avoidance. The individual behaves in order to get out of doing something he or she does not want to do. It could be attention seeking. The student behaves to get focused attention, maybe from teachers, siblings, peers, or even their parents. Because they may know that you're going to call their parents once they demonstrate a certain behavior. They know that's going to be the end result. Maybe mom or dad or granny or whomever takes care of them may pick them up, or maybe they just get to talk to them on the phone. It could be something tangible, trying to seek access to materials or activities. And then, and they may be trying to get you to give them their preferred activity, which could be the tablet, or it could be playing with the manipulatives or playing a game, whatever it may be, but they're trying to seek something, and it could be sensory stimulation. They behave in specific ways that feels good to them, that gives them what they need. And so with functional behavior assessments, we can kind of narrow them down into two: to escape or avoid, or to gain something. And also my slides will be shared with you all at the end of this session. And so all of my links, and I apologize, I can't show you anything, but on basicfba.com, they have modules that are very interactive. And I actually go through those FBA modules myself. They have some for school-wide, and they also have some specifically for behavior specialists, the behavior specialists. Those are a little bit longer, those modules, but it digs deeper into the behavior so you can share out with your team or your school that you work with. And functional behavior assessments are not for only students with disabilities that receive special education services. You can do an informal functional behavior assessment to figure out the function of the behavior, and then that also can lead you to an informal behavior intervention plan as well. And PENT, the Positive Environment Network trainers, they also have a great FBA development and FBA design that kind of takes you through, and also has PDF resources that kind of takes you through and walks you through that process of a FBA or a BIP as well. Some different components of the FBA would be a student record review that's looking through the student attendance, looking over their academic history, looking at their, excuse me, I've already said attendance, but just looking over their past interventions, and just looking over their overall educational and behavior history. Also another part, component of FBA are interviews. You want to interview teachers, you want to interview parents, the student themselves as well, and direct observations. And guys, I am talking fast because I spent most of my time with technology issues, so I do apologize. And so what is a behavior intervention plan? It is a proactive action plan to address challenging behaviors that are impeding the learning of the student or others. And the primary purpose of a BIP is to teach replacement behaviors. And you may ask, what are replacement behaviors? Replacement behaviors are skills to be taught to take the place of the target behavior, and it's based on the function of the behavior. And they're going to vary among different students and different behavior functions as well. And so I had a little practice, so it's all good. But so replacement behaviors are taught. That is not something that we just put down on the the behavior intervention plan, whether it be formal or informal. But those replacement behaviors are what the desired behavior is. What is it that the student should be doing appropriately at that time for that classroom, that setting, wherever they are? What are the behaviors and strategies that you want them to display? And remember, the behavior needs to be measurable, objective, because behavior looks different to different people. Okay. And I just always give this example of grandma, but grandma doesn't find hardly anything disruptive, or, her grandchildren don't do much anything that, bothers her, or she doesn't see that it's inappropriate. But me, I definitely see a lot of inappropriate behavior. So you just have to describe what that behavior is, make sure it's measurable, objectable, and if anybody were to pick that behavior intervention plan up or the FBA up, they can see what the behavior is. It's not just saying Brittany is disruptive. No, when Brittany is disruptive, what does that look like? And what replacement behavior do you want to teach Brittany in order to fade out the undesirable behavior? And so a few behavior strategies that I will talk about. One of them, the first one, is a precision request. And so precision request is a structured way of giving directions that includes several characteristics designed to enhance compliance. It's not gonna always give you compliance, but it's ways to enhance compliance, to seek compliance. And that first begins with a please request. And once you give that student, use the word please in that request, you're gonna wait 3 to 5 seconds, or that wait time. The wait time that's appropriate for your students. Some students, they may only need 3 seconds to respond. Some students, it's going to be maybe 30 seconds to a minute. Your students well enough, and the appropriate wait time to give them. And once you give them that please request, please, Brittany, have a seat. You give me 3 to 5 seconds. And then if I'm compliant, you reinforce that. Tell me that, thank you for sitting down in your seat. Tell me exactly what I did. Praise me for that. Be very specific and let me know, so that I have the likelihood of me repeating that behavior will happen again. Now, the student may be non-compliant, and in that case, then you still provide that wait time after you've made the initial request. And if they're non-compliant, give them that wait time, go back to them. And some students are going to require you to do this privately. Some students can take the request in the open, but once again, it goes back to knowing your students and building that relationship. And so you let them know you need to have a seat. At this time, this is what we are doing. And also follow up with your classroom expectations. I know everybody has those classroom expectations. You have your school-wide expectations, then you have your classroom expectations. And making sure that you're aligning up with your expectations when you do ask the student, you do request something of the student, making sure that it aligns with your classroom expectations, because that's what you're going to rely on. That is, you sleep, live it, you breathe that, you believe it, and your students will too. And that is something to keep everybody consistent and everybody on the same page. And after you give that you need to request, you give them more wait time. And if they are compliant after that second request, reinforce it, let them know exactly, give them specific positive feedback, let them know what they did well, and you move on and move on. If they're non-compliant, then that's when the consequences come in. And those consequences have been laid out before. The student is aware. That goes back to your classroom expectations. If we follow these expectations, this is what happens. But if we do not follow these expectations, and that's establishing that at the beginning of the year, this is what happens. Those students are already aware of whatever your whatever the consequence is. It's nothing new to the student. Okay, any questions? All right, I will move along. High probability requests. High probability request identifies an academic task in which the student typically shows a low probability of completing or complying. And so when you prep for this, you're gonna identify non-compliant behavior. And then you're gonna create a list of high probability tasks that you know the student can easily do and wants to do, and can, it's not a problem. It's not going to hang them up, or they're not going to get upset about it. And within that list of high probability tasks, you're going to embed, within that list, you're going to embed that low probability task, which is that non-compliant behavior. And then you're going to implement the strategy. And so with that, I like to use the example with my own son. He does not like to brush his teeth or shower, and that is fine. I understand that, but when you go out in public or you go to school, that is something that you have to do. And so I just kind of get a behavior momentum going with him. I'm like, all right, great. Drink your cup of milk. Yes, mom. All right, great. Go ahead, change your pajamas. You're right. Brush your teeth, then get into bed. And so it took over time for me to get him to do that, but I just kept doing it. And then eventually he's like, there's no problem with him brushing his teeth. And even in the classroom as well, I had a student who had difficulty beginning to write. Every time open his journal, it's just kind of like a meltdown. Well, okay, great. Let me give you something that you do enjoy doing. Write your name on your paper. Some things that you can do, because he had difficulty writing. Write your name on the paper. Great. Write down the date. All right. Draw a picture first. Great. Now go ahead and tell me about that picture. Now, he kind of hesitated when he got to the writing part, but it came along. We started out with the few words, then we just slowly built up. But high probability requests are very helpful with those students who display non-compliant behaviors. Student choice. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are also familiar with student choices. This can be difficult sometimes, especially in maybe a smaller class setting, or even in a large class. This can be difficult because as teachers, as educators, we have things that we have to do. There's have to do's, and then there's negotiables, and that we can kind of waver on. But sometimes academic task is just what you have to do. But if we can find it throughout the day to give the student a choice of whether they want to do their math work first, especially during independent time or enrichment time. Give them a choice of, do you want to complete your math independent work first, or would you like to complete your English? Like, you do it, but these are the things that you have to do. Maybe you give a student a choice of where they would like to sit or work for that time period. It doesn't have to be for all day. Maybe you can give the option to a student to sit or stand while working. If a student is on a reward system, let that student complete the reward menu with you. Ask them what they like, or give them a choice of what they, a reward. Don't just say, here's your gummies and go, So just giving a student a voice. I like to say giving student voice also. Pre-correction. So pre-correction, this is one of my favorites. I feel like this one, I like to look at this strategy as filling the student's bucket for the day, filling their resources, giving them everything that they need, which we can't give them everything, but, building them up for success and having those tools ready for them to pull out as they need it. And as a reminder, pre-correction is a behavior strategy that is a response to inappropriate behavior prior to the behavior occurring. So it's almost like I used to know that for my students, transitions were hard. Transitions, anytime they had to leave me, it was very difficult. And even I taught elementary, and even in my high school years also, I noticed that when my students, before class ended, my freshman boys especially would kind of melt down, and they would tell me they didn't want to leave my classroom. But before that, I had to let them know, I had to build them up. I had to let them know what their remind them of the school-wide expectations in the were for the school, and to be respectful to your teachers, just as you were respectful to me. I had to remind them of that as well. But this is where the teacher anticipates the inappropriate behavior and teaches the appropriate academic and behavioral responses. So pre-correction can be used before transitions. It's a good reminder. A lot of times before my freshman boys left me, I taught Algebra 1. A lot of times before they left me, I reminded them, yes, I had to say, we will walk in the hallways. We will use an appropriate voice in the hallways when trying to get the attention of our friends that's way down the hallway. Instead of yelling down the hallway, we'll just walk down the hallway and, get their attention. So and also pre-correction can be used during a task as well to remind them of what independent reading looks like, or what independent work time looks like, and also during a lesson. And that goes back to your classroom expectations. It all kind of goes back to that, and reminding them of those expectations and being consistent, and reminding them when you are pre-correcting a student, just reminding them of those expectations. And that as adult behavior matters, we have to stick to the expectations as well. And so some examples of pre-correction for behavior is reviewing hallway expectations before leaving for lunch or special area, prompting a student that time is almost up before the class period ends if they have difficulty ending preferred activities, and academic, providing a student with a visual reminder of how to solve two-step equations on his or her desk. That is also a way of pre-correction and a visual guide for the student. And so also an engagement strategy also is one of my favorites. Opportunities to respond. I don't know if you are familiar with opportunities to respond, but this is the interaction between the teacher's academic prompt, verbal, visual, or written, and student verbal, visual, written, and gestural responses. And so when looking at opportunities to respond, this is getting the students it's that engagement between the teacher and the student. The teacher is either verbally saying something, or they're showing a yes or no response using a card, or their hands, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fist to 5. And so when looking at opportunities to respond, we like to look at it with that ABC, the antecedent, behavior, and then consequence. So an opportunity to respond, the antecedent is going to be the opportunity to respond. That's going to be the teacher prompt. The behavior is the student response, how the student responds, whether it's going to be visual, written, or gestural. And then the consequence, that's the feedback. That's what you get from the students. And that's a formative way to assess students as well in the classroom. And so some of the benefits of opportunities to respond, and increase your student engagement, is definitely going to increase your academic achievement. Research has been shown that this also decreases disruptive behavior because students are engaged. You're constantly giving them an opportunity to be involved in the lesson, and that dialogue back and forth with you and the student. This also improves the student-teacher interactions. And also this gives students a way to express knowledge and their thought processes. And it gives that student that different way to do it, because not all students respond the same, and not all students are able, learn the same as well. And so just a few guidelines with opportunities to respond. Teacher talk is no more than 40 to 50% of the instructional time. So that is a lot of shared engagement with the student. And like now, this is a poor example of opportunity to respond because I'm just talking at you guys. But yes, it's 40 to 50% of the time. You're not, as a teacher, we're not talking more than that. Recent research proves that at least 3 OTRs per minute it needs to be in a general education classroom. Now, guys, that is a lot. I always like to give that 3 OTRs, that per minute, you work your way up to that. And yes, you work your way. And the more you become familiar with it, the more you will do it. And I will tell you, there are some seasoned teachers that still kind of struggle with that. And overall, and when dealing with, when you do have opportunities to respond, you can use them for previously learned material. And with that, that's 9 to 12 responses per minute. So that has increased. And this is with materials that the students know, they have mastered. And so you may just be using opportunities to respond as a review. It could be review cards. It could be stop and jot. It could be, and I'm going to talk more about those in a few minutes, but the opportunities to respond, you need to at least have 9 to 12 responses per minute, and that's with 90% accuracy. When you present new material after presenting the new material, it's going to be 4 to 6 responses per minute with 80% accuracy. And these are just some guidelines. This is not something like you have to do, but this is what you work your way up to with opportunities to respond. And in some of the general response routines that you do find in opportunities to respond, we have individual response routine, and then it's a partner response routine. So opportunities to respond, it can give you a group setting. You're able to use within a group setting, small group setting, partners, or individuals if you just want students to remain in their desk. And so with those individual response routines, the teacher asks a question or you give a prompt, and then next you give the appropriate wait time. And you provide the cue when it's time for students to respond. And then the students provide the feedback. And your partner response routine, of course, you're going to assign partners, teams, elbow partners, however you want to do it. And then you're going to ask a question or give a prompt, and then you're going to cue the students on how to construct the response. So you're going to tell them how you want them to respond, whether it be one person speak out in that group or one person speak out with the partner, or it could be that you're having those that you assign, A, B, C, and D, and then all the A's go in one group, all the B's go in another group, all the C's go in another, and all the D's, however you want to do it. And you allow them to respond. You tell them how you want to respond. Give that appropriate wait time. And then as you're waiting, you circulate the room and you provide feedback within those small groups if you should see a group struggling or whatnot. And then you're going to cue the sharing of those responses. You're going to prompt them to tell them now it's time to respond, and give feedback to the student. After the students respond, you're going to give that positive, specific feedback to the students and to the students that also responded, the other students in the classroom as well. You always want to be providing feedback for students so they can know where they are. Just like how we want to know as adults, like to our administrators, am I doing a good job? I need that feedback. We need that feedback as educators in order to keep excelling and keep providing things for students. And so students also crave that and need that as well, that positive, specific feedback, whether it be for behavior or academic. And so some strategies associated with opportunities to respond, is been categorized into 3 categories: verbal response, nonverbal response, and then you have your partner team response. With your verbal responses, we have what's called whip around, and whip around is where the teacher asks a question and the students respond in a quick fashion. Each student responds. whether they're right, wrong, or indifferent. The whole goal of this is to get every student to respond and actively engage. And all these strategies, you're trying to just get the students engaged. And with the whip around, every student responds. I like to give the example of everybody name a president, any president, and you just go bam, bam, bam. You start down the front row and you just keep going to all the students respond. Like I said, once again, whether they're right, wrong, or indifferent, the goal here is with verbal responses, trying to get every student engaged and actively learning. Also, you have core response. Core response is exactly what it sounds like. On 3, everybody tell me 2 times 2. 4, everybody responds out at the same time. And also you have your individual responding, which you may just call on 1 or 2 students to respond. Your nonverbal responses, those could be your response slates. Those are just whiteboards or response cards. It could be you have yes, no cards, true, false, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Whatever your question is or your prompt, students respond non-verbally. They're going to hold up something. Another way to respond, stop and jot. That could be like a lecture style almost, or if the student, a journal entry. You give a student a writing prompt or a question to answer, and they stop and then they write it down, stop and jot. Another nonverbal response is hand signals. Could be, please give me your level of understanding. How well do you, and I'm just throwing this out there, how comfortable do you feel baking a cake on your own? 1, not comfortable. 2, I think. 3, I can do this with some help. Or 4, I can do this independently. So, or your fist to 5 strategies. And nextly, partner and team response. And that's your think, pair, share. It's your cued retail, and it's the number heads together. And think, pair, share is one of my favorites. This is where the students, you can have the students think on their own, respond. You give a student a writing prompt or a question that based upon the lesson that you give that does require a short answer response. You have the students to respond individually. You pair them up. Your partner, anybody, or excuse me, I'm sorry, your elbow partner, share out with your elbow partner, and they share those ideas or they share their responses, and then they come back to the bigger group, and you can have one person out of that group share the whole class, however you feel. Okay. Are there any questions? Because I'm kind of speeding through this. I don't want to hold you guys the entire time. Any questions? All right. And so lastly, we'll kind of end on with analyzing behaviors and data collection. And so I have a behavior pathways chart that I wanted to show you guys that you can use in your classroom, in your schools. I have an example on my resource pages, and this will be available afterwards as well. But it kind of takes you through the behavior pathway, and it has a section for just the classroom managing of the behavior and interventions, and then one for the office or your administrators that you have. But the behavior pathway flow chart, it gives you an idea of what you're going to do if this behavior happens, and it gives you 2 ways to go. If the behavior deems to go to the office, or this is a admin thing, then you know your appropriate steps. It's lined out for you to do. You have done that and you know what you're going to do. And the same way, if it's a classroom behavior, it's something that you can manage as the teacher in the classroom with interventions, then it has a section for you to complete. But it's on the same page, and it's a visual reminder, and it's a resource that you can go back and use. It was very helpful for me in the classroom, especially being a first-year teacher. And also on the resource page, a SIM, I call SIM, is student intervention matching. And guys, this is an informal way of just kind of matching those tier 2 interventions to students. And remember, going back to the triangle, is for that yellow group of students. Like, they're getting everything on green, they're getting school-wide expectations and everything else that everybody's getting, but they just need a step up. And so the student intervention matching form, you go through and you rate the behaviors of very true, sometimes true, unlikely, or don't know. And so it gives you that column. That's what I really like about it, because sometimes you don't know the student's behavior, but it gives you that, and you can put a 1, 2, or 3, and you total up the scores, and it kind of gives you an idea of the possible interventions that can match up with the behaviors that the students are displaying. And I will tell you, you want to pick one behavior, maybe 2, but one behavior is good to focus on when doing the student intervention matching form. And some data collection tools and ABC recording. I know a lot of you all are probably familiar with the ABC collection form, but the A stands for, antecedent, what happens before the behavior. And also I have several forms and charts, different ways, different adaptations of the ABC recording form in my resources as well. Some are completed, some are not. Some are a little more detailed. Some just leaves open for you to design on your own. But when we're recording ABC recording, that A stands for antecedent, what happens before the behavior. That could be leading all the way back to home. If students they get off the bus, or they come in, get out of their parents' car, whatever, as you know, the behavior's already started. It started at home. It had nothing to do with you, had nothing to do with school, anything. But that is an important factor to consider. So we look at what happens before the behavior. The B stands for behavior. What is the exact behavior? What is it that they're doing? And once again, we want it measurable. You want it objective. You want a person to be able to pick it up and see, be able to read it and say, oh, I know exactly what the behavior Brittany is displaying. So you want to be very specific. And C stands for consequences. What happened after? Consequences are not always bad, but what happened after the behavior? What did the student get? What they were trying to get? Did they gain your attention? Did they gain the attention of the peers? Did they get that item that they were not supposed to get? You know, what happened after that? And that all those together, the antecedent, behavior, and consequence helps you look at the behavior overall and helps you to shape that. And also I have a form here of which type of data collection should I use. And this is kind of a cheat sheet that I use, that I created myself. And so the question, how often? So if you were measuring how often the behavior happens, that would be your event recording. That would be frequency. Maybe you need to know how many times they're leaving the classroom. It could be rate, percentage. All those fall up under event recording. And also time sampling of intervals as well. If you want to know how long a behavior lasts, that's going to be your duration. How long does it? And so that's how you're going to measure the duration of the behavior. How long until the behavior begins, that's going to be your latency recording. And also I have examples of these on my resource page. And then if you're wanting to know what environmental variables are impacting the behavior, just getting that clear overview picture of the behavior, and ABC analysis form would be where you should start and be very helpful as well. And you guys can't see, but I have my resource page as well that has everything that I have talked about. I know I have flown through a lot, and also, let me go back to, and also I know my screen did not show as well. And so I really appreciate your time. And I'm now open for questions and comments, anything. I really hate that I just talked the entire time. I really do. I had some activity, so I do apologize. But yes, that is what I have. Does anyone have any questions or go back to this or more? Yes, the resources, I am going to send this to Katie, and she's going to put it in a Google Drive for everyone to access. Thank you all. And I think this is right before lunch, maybe. I don't know. You guys get a break after this, maybe?
We do. We get a little bit of a break.
Okay.
Brittany, thank you so much for all of this. It's a lot of information to take in, but it's a lot of really great information. And we always love it when KY-ABRI is able to share resources with us, because you guys have such great information. You have so much resources to share and stuff we can all use. So thank you very much for being here and sharing it with us. And we will certainly share out all of your resources on our Google Drive for the entire conference. And you'll be able to access not just that, but all of the other sessions as well and everything that we have. So thank you for being here. We appreciate your time this morning. We are on lunch officially until 12:15. It's a short lunch break, but you'll have a break till 12:15, and then you can join your next session by simply clicking the link for that session in your program, and that'll take you there. Thanks everybody for being here. We appreciate you all so much.